Even a secure, self-assured, outgoing individual might find themselves dealing with insecurities after sustaining a strong measure of anxiety. Some state they feel as if they were broadsided by this condition. Never shy, never withdrawn, and generally outgoing individuals, happy childhoods and enjoyable work, good social lives, and out of nowhere they felt slapped down by this unimaginable force. Never did they realize how easily they fell into the trap of anxiety and this condition. And it is a trap, and don't let it fool you. The sensations are often strong and seem as if they surfaced out of the blue. But they didn't. The individual begins to doubt their capabilities and second-guess their own strength. Confidence plummets as their once strong inner core is replaced by a frightened inner child's voice, a cautious, easily defeated, negative inner voice. And naturally, like anyone else who's experienced anxiety, they long for the days when they operated from strength and hope against hope for the return of this inner power that they once possessed. Since the majority of individuals who struggle with anxiety always view it as something outside themselves, there is never the issue of responsibility. This thing somehow struck, and one believes they are merely a victim. Being a victim is not a great place to be, and believe me, I've been there. I would wonder, where did this come from? Why is it here? When will it ever leave? Yes, being a victim wears thin after a while, and eventually one comes to the realization that this condition might have stemmed from stress in one's life. But the truth of the matter is that stress is past, but memory has a way of holding on to stress, reminding us at the most inopportune times what a stress reaction actually feels like. Yes, stress and anxiety symptoms have a way of creating a strong impression, of imprinting. The initial stressor is gone, but the memory is there and clearly reminds the brain of the discomfort, danger, or any other interpretation it might conjure up. Strength recedes as the voice of the frightened inner child takes the front seat. And this is because it's reminded through memory, nothing more. A slight memory, a sight, a sound, a scent is enough to conjure up the feelings one experienced the last time they went through an anxiety reaction. Yes, these feelings seem to grow out of nowhere, which only frustrates the individual more. They would love to summon their adult voice, but they don't have a clue where to look. This is where responsibility steps in. At one point or another, it's time to step up and locate your adult voice. This is the voice of truth, reason, and common sense. This is the voice that quiets the fears of the frightened child, places him or her in the back seat, and takes the steering wheel. You have allowed your adult voice to take the back seat for too long. This vehicle cannot be steered by a frightened child in order for you to maintain happiness. It can't be done. It's time to call upon your adult voice, bring it forward, and keep it there. It's easy to blame everyone from parents to siblings, teachers to spouses for everything that's wrong and why anxiety has grown out of the stresses in your life. But when it comes down to it, as adults, we have to take charge and make our lives exactly what we wish them to be. We have to take full and complete responsibility for every single aspect of our lives. There is an adult who resides inside of you and is waiting to take front and center stage. This voice has a lot to say and a lot to do. This is the facet of your true personality, the you with courage. This is the you who looks out for your best interest and who doesn't cave to childish thoughts. There's a big difference between being childlike and childish. Being childlike is our playful side, and it's a great way to let go and relax. Childish is a whole other story. It's looking at the fearful side of things and not seeing an event for what it actually is. It's a misinterpretation. What I'm saying is the adult in all of us is the decision maker, the strength, and the one who knows the logical, pragmatic side of life. This voice is the voice that will deliver you from anxiety and back into a richer life, both personal, social, business, and in every sense. The life that has slipped out of reach due to anxiety symptoms. You can reclaim this life. The adult voice, when allowed to surface, provides us with our direction, our strength, our inner peace. It allows us to see the logical side of issues. The scared child's voice, on the other hand, is more emotional, frantic, and impulsive. This is why it's essential to locate your adult voice and urge it forward. There'll be no doubt in your mind once you tap into this inner voice of reason, of truth. Your strength and resolve becomes almost tangible as you graduate from weak victim to competent adult. I clearly remember thinking I had matured from a fearful child into a capable adult in a matter of weeks once I realized how to use my adult voice. It was noticeable, and others remarked about this change. They saw me taking charge of my life. They witnessed the new me taking control back, and it felt great. In order to locate your adult voice, you must begin by changing the way you speak to yourself. Your inner dialogue must reflect the mindset of a mature adult. It takes a little practice, but it is well worth the time and effort. I suggest you pause before you answer, slow down, and make sure your decision is coming from a place of strength. Be certain you're not giving in or acquiescing in order to avoid confrontation. Think about the consequences of your answers and actions, and then choose. We make choices every moment of our lives. Take the time to make the choice that suits you this time. When you do, you'll begin to rebuild your self-respect and confidence. Self-confidence is extremely important. You'll take responsibility, full responsibility for all your decisions. You'll begin to feel your inner strength. Once your adult voice takes charge, you are charting the course. There's nothing like taking full responsibility for your life. Isn't it time you grabbed the reins and took back control of your own life? Forget about feeling needy, relying on others, or being the victim of life. Dependence is not attractive. Taking charge is. It's wonderful to delegate tasks, and it's great to have help when you need it, but it's also wonderful to depend on yourself. This is true empowerment. Anytime you struggled with an issue, you were approaching it with your fearful child at the helm. The next time you approach a difficult situation, try using your adult voice. Come to a practical solution this time without emotionalizing it along the way. It's the overreacting, the over-emotionalizing that trips you up. Instead, think about how you could have settled an issue minus the intrusive emotions, the what-if fears, and the frightened child's voice holding you back. Anytime you react in a negative fashion with frightened thoughts and fears of failing, this is your fearful inner child speaking. Your adult voice is nowhere to be found. Insecurities, health worries, indecision, and lack of confidence all stem from that little voice of fear, your insecure child. There is no reason to be angry at this side of yourself. In fact, the best way to handle this voice is to reassure it with your adult voice. Explain the truth of the situation, unmask the fear, and allow the child inside of you to see the light and settle down. It works every time. Speak gently to it, but firmly, and allow it to understand the truth of the matter. Be sure your adult voice is the stronger of the two, and what might have begun as a daunting situation will easily reach resolution. In the past, fear may have pushed this adult voice so far back you might have believed it was lost. This can never happen, though. Your inner strength is always waiting for you to beckon. Your adult voice might be in reserve, but it's ready to be summoned. Use your adult voice to change the way you think. Instead of sentences beginning with what if, such as, what if I cannot remain in this meeting? You have the power, the ability to use your adult voice to bring it in and cancel out the frightened child's thoughts and reword it into, anxiety reactions are merely my perception of this situation, and I know how to embrace these sensations and they will melt. And the longer I think fearful thoughts, the longer these sensations will remain. And I always have a choice. And when I use my adult voice, I'll always see the truth in the situation. The next time you make a choice, listen in to the way you perceive events, issues, and the way you apply yourself. If you find you're not winning in life, your adult voice has become lost along the way. If, on the other hand, you're enjoying your life, satisfied with relationships, making strides at work, and feel respected by others and yourself, you're obviously operating with your adult voice. You're connected to your wiser self and reaping the rewards. This internal voice signals discomfort when we're not living up to our expectations or if we're letting ourselves down. This voice will remind you of your responsibility to yourself and to others in your life. Once you begin using your coping methods and using your adult voice on a daily basis, you'll find your life becomes easier, less of a struggle. It begins to work. The next time you have a meeting at work, an appointment or commitment, approach it from an entirely new perspective. Instead of a negative, "here we go again" comment, view this as a challenge. A challenge to link up with your adult voice and fulfill your commitment with confidence and assurance. Act as if you are the strong adult you hope to become, and your actions will reflect this mindset. If negative thoughts enter your mind, stop and rethink this. Override these thoughts with a more practical approach and eliminate the emotions. If the thought is more of a challenge, you have tapped into your adult voice. If your thoughts are fearful and your physical reactions reflect this, you are still hearing your scared inner child. This is when you may need to reassure yourself that these fears are unfounded and without emotionalizing, design a different approach. Leave off the emotionalizing and take the challenge with dignity and grace. Life can be a great adventure when you tap into the calm, quiet intelligence which accompanies your adult voice. Sizing up situations becomes more of a challenge than a threat. Your inner dialogue will reflect more of a leadership quality rather than being one of the herd. You'll want to take more risks when you realize you're able to win. Your what-ifs turn to so-whats as you gain inner strength. Even your posture reflects into you. Stand tall and be proud to be who you are. Maintain a smooth, calm tone to your voice as you speak up and out. Look at the person you're speaking to, and your stance will reflect your intentions. We do teach others how we wish to be treated. Set a precedence by saying what you mean what you say, and say it with your adult voice, posture, and tone. No more being the people pleaser at all costs. When you please everyone but yourself, you lose yourself along the way. This is too costly and not in your best interest. I remember how proud I felt when others began noticing and commenting on the way I handled my life after I learned how to deal with my anxiety. I was no longer a victim, and my voice and actions reflected this change. I no longer danced around issues. I said what needed to be said, and I did so kindly but firmly. It felt strange at first, but I quickly became used to this new and more powerful me. No longer could I claim victim status. I left it behind when I connected to my adult voice. It wasn't that I didn't care about others, but I began to consider myself as well. I created a life where I nurtured myself, shared with others, and fed my self-esteem. No excuses, no blame, and no whining. I took full responsibility and stood behind my word. I thought before I replied, and I made sure my decisions were mine alone. I no longer felt compelled to please the world or go along with the crowd. I trusted my decisions because they were thought out with my adult voice. Yes, and you too are able to take your life and pull it together by making use of your adult voice. You have nothing to lose and everything to gain. The next time you're fearful about attending a meeting, visiting a physician, speaking to your child's teacher or principal, just remember these people are equally as fearful of you as you are of them. Take a look at the other passengers on an elevator the next time you step on, or strangers walking down the street. If you notice, most look the other way or pretend they don't see you. They act as if they're deep in thought or busy contemplating a serious decision. This is because they are more afraid of you than you are of them. This is why women wear makeup and men flex their muscles. Everyone is equally afraid of everyone else. You are no different. Never again will you look at your frightened inner child the same way once you understand this truth. Claim your adult voice and be a part of the human race. You're no different than anyone else. Years earlier, when I was fearful of anxiety and I was terrified to go for a dental appointment, I braced myself as I sat there waiting for whatever I imagined, which never actually occurred. I was actually more frightened of having an anxiety reaction than fearful of the pain. Humiliation was always the greater fear. What if I have to leave in a hurry? How embarrassing. But then I began talking with my dentist, realizing he's a human being like everyone else. We actually became friends over the years. And you know what? I lost my fears when I went to his office because I realized he was the same as you or I. And so is your boss, your doctor, your dentist, your child's teacher or principal. Everyone has the same fears as you. You are no different. When you reach out and share with others, your own fears begin to shrink to manageable size. You cannot center in on one fear when your mind is fully engaged in another activity. Boredom is the great enemy of the anxious individual. Too much time and an active mind spells problems. This is why it's important to engage in conversation, listen to others, become a part of life, and leave your introspection behind. When I had anxiety years ago, I was always fearful of having to leave a restaurant, in fear of someone noticing or thinking I was weak, and I would humiliate myself by rushing out that door and having to run home. Well, I never actually did that, but the fear always accompanied me when I went out. I later noticed that others leave their seats, go to the restroom, step outside for better cell phone reception, and no one thinks anything of it. One night, our entire family went out to dinner, and at one point I realized I was the only one left at the table. Everyone else was on their cell phones, in the restroom, table hopping. Shows you how things change over the years. What you might have worried about in the past is nothing in the present or future. Many fear walking down the street practicing coping skills. They think to themselves, what if I must turn around and come home? This thought hangs heavy over their heads because shame and humiliation are connected with these thoughts about turning back, and it stops them from going outdoors and enjoying the day. Now, how many times have you forgotten your wallet, left the lights on, or forgotten something on the stove and had to turn around? You didn't beat yourself up for this, and you did not think about how weak this must seem to other people. No, because you gave yourself different messages. Just as you relax when you leave an uncomfortable situation in a mall, meeting, or store, and you go back to your car and you breathe a sigh of relief and tell yourself you're okay, this is because the message has changed. The only thing that's changed is the internal message that you're giving to yourself, and the message makes all the difference in the world. You return home after an anxious drive, you close the front door, and you breathe a sigh of relief. Your body doesn't know it's safer, but your mind has given it the okay sign. It's given the signal that you're safe. You're in your comfort zone, and so you may breathe a sigh of relief. Your body doesn't know it's safer, but your mind has given it the okay sign. You're in your comfort zone, and so you may breathe a sigh of relief. Once you begin using your adult voice and practice the coping skills, you'll feel safe in all situations. You begin to realize the truth of the situation and operate from strength. Your messages will change, and so will your body reactions in response to the messages. We can't always change a situation, but we have full control of our reactions. It all begins with a thought. Allow yourself to be human. Humans aren't perfect. We make mistakes, we accept our weaknesses, and we give ourselves a second chance. I once remember not being able to fall asleep at night, and I finally gave up and gave myself permission not to sleep. The moment I did that, I relaxed and dozed off. The pressure was removed. Another example of how tapping into your adult voice will alter a situation. The next time you fear something, try giving yourself permission to fear it and experience this fear through. You'll be surprised at how quickly the fear subsides once it's no longer a big issue. It's just another form of total acceptance. Begin to view meetings, appointments, and other occasions as opportunities to use your adult voice and learn from your experiences. Instead of viewing an event with dread, arrive with an open mind and listen to others rather than focus on yourself. After the first 5 minutes, you'll have overcome the initial barrier of fear anyway. Once you pass that juncture, you'll settle down and enjoy yourself. Allow yourself to become lost in the activity or conversation. You'll always gain something positive when you interact with others, especially with an open mind. There is always something to gain when you look at life from a fresh point of view. Introspective thought cannot operate when you are fully engaged with another person. When I was extremely fearful and riddled with anxiety years ago, I remember walking to the front door and pausing. I believe I was frozen in fear. It was so difficult to move forward with all the anxiety coursing through my body. It must have been very noticeable because my daughter, who was in elementary school at the time, looked up at me from the sofa and said, "Go for it." I looked at her and repeated that statement over and over again, all the way to the car and throughout the rest of the day. 3 simple words that gave me the courage to continue on with my journey. The power of thought. Now that's strong medicine. Never believe that everything is purely anxiety related either. Sometimes hot weather places a stress on the body. Cortisol levels rise in warmer weather. This is why people are more irritable when the temperature rises. This doesn't mean you'll experience anxiety every summer day when the weather's a little warmer, but knowing you might experience irritability is a piece of knowledge you might want to be aware of. You may compensate by wearing cotton clothing and drinking cool, pure water. Think with your adult voice, and you'll always make the best of a situation. Negativity is one of the great pitfalls of the anxiety condition. The frightened inner child picks up on this immediately and runs with it. It becomes habit as one becomes caught up in a negative cycle and begins to build on it. This fearful voice is almost an internal noise or static we must learn to tune out. From the fear of dreaded disease to the loss of a loved one, a vivid imagination will fuel the fearful voice. Sometimes unexpected things do occur, but so is life. Traffic jams do occur and people are late for appointments. This doesn't mean they're lying in the street somewhere. And yet this is how the person with anxiety sometimes perceives a situation out of fear. This is the way fear affects the mind's eye when you're sensitized. And sometimes a headache is merely a headache, an itch is merely an itch, a head cold is merely a head cold, and not some form of incurable disease. We all worry, and worry leads to more worry, and we often believe worrying wards off danger or proves that we care. The worry habit is very strong and formed early in life. I can clearly remember my own family and how worry played a part in my own childhood. I can still see the look in my mother's eyes when my father was late for dinner and it was snowing outside. The streetlights shone bright, but every car that skidded down our street was someone else's parents' car and not my father. My mother would pretend everything was okay, but we could see the look of fear in her eyes. My sister and I still talk about it to this day, how relieved we would feel when my father finally pulled down the street. Tears of joy would stream down our faces as he finally pulled up. We both had visions of him face down in a snowdrift, just by the impression my mother made upon us, unbeknownst to her. The funniest part of all is we should have been used to this since my mother would worry if he was 5 minutes late. But actions often speak louder than words, and we read her fear loud and clear. We laugh now about it when we speak of it, but it certainly set a precedent in our lives, and we probably still worry when anyone is late for dinner or anything else. My mother was inadvertently teaching us to worry, and we had to make a conscious effort not to do that in our adult lives. We don't blame my mother because she cared so much about my father, but we realize that we all pick up behaviors from childhood, from parents and families and teachers who did the best they could with what they knew. My mother certainly didn't intend to frighten us, but she was real and genuine in her feelings, and sometimes it's difficult to hide our fears from our family members, especially children. She was truly concerned, and we just happened to be there. Maybe we even learned a lesson from this. Yes, there's always a lesson to be learned from every situation. We learned to save our reactions until we had all the facts. So use your adult voice, your adult logic, your adult power in all situations. Not everyone is as caring as our mother, and we often find ourselves in stressful situations at the hand of someone who does not have our best interests at heart. This is the time to remember there may actually be an upside to many negative situations. Many believe that it helps to think that difficult situations in our lives act as a learning or teaching experience. I know I believe that, and it's proven true in so many instances. Another way of looking at these situations is to see this person as a teacher in some way and decide what we can learn from this negative situation. Maybe there's actually something positive we can draw from the experience. There usually is. When a person is genuinely rude to us, we learn how not to treat other people as we understand the pain one feels on the receiving end of bad manners. Even when we have to endure anxiety, we learn about patience and its virtues. There's always a way to view something negative and turn it into a positive. Your adult voice is a great teacher as it views the practical side of situations. The brain often has difficulty with feelings of anger. It turns off to angry feelings in an effort to protect us. Just as we are nearing a vital confrontation, a symptom or a worry will often fill the mind completely. The worry cycle takes off, one symptom is resolved and another crops up to take its place. This is in response to an upcoming confrontation. Be aware of this. You'll notice whenever you're close to confronting someone, the brain will often step in with a symptom to take your mind off of it and to prevent the confrontation. It often takes conscious effort to resolve anger issues. Anger is a very strong emotion, and if repressed, often manifests itself in other areas such as headaches, backaches, anxiety, and depression. This is why it is so important to express your true emotions. I've met people who make it a lifelong ambition to be angry about every least little thing. It's important to choose your battles wisely. Anger can become a way of life if you're not careful. And this is why using your adult voice and taking responsibility is essential. The blame game ends and you're accountable for all end results. I would also like to remind you about a tired mind, a fatigued mind due to constant stress and worry. Many who are sensitized complain about strange thoughts floating through their consciousness. They worry and they wonder if this is indicative of something serious or their condition is progressing. Let me assure you that neither is true. This is once again the product of a tired mind. Unusual and strange thoughts always cross one's mind. The difference is sensitization again. Once one is even mildly vulnerable and sensitized, every thought feels exaggerated and more important than it should be. Thoughts begin to feel bigger than life and sometimes stick. This is logical due to the stress of worry. Once you understand this and stop fueling it with more worry, the mind will refresh and once again, odd or strange thoughts will roll off just as they had in the past. So anytime you may feel your thoughts are becoming overwhelming or difficult to brush away, acknowledge the fact that you're stressed and a tired mind is more vulnerable. It's more easily upset by small disturbances. You may notice this interference occurs at certain times of the day when things slow down and you're bored, or right before dinner when blood sugar dips. This doesn't mean it will always happen then. It just means it lends itself to certain circumstances. The best thing you can do is to acknowledge what it is and what it isn't and learn to deal with it in the proper way with your coping skills. Use your adult voice to explain to yourself how fear and a tired mind go hand in hand. Choose not to fight your thoughts. It's merely tired thoughts in a tired mind. The moment you become engaged in other thoughts and lose the worry habit, thoughts lose their ability to linger in the mind, and these sensations disappear just as they came. The power of thought is extremely strong. You have a choice about what you focus upon. Your thoughts, your internal voice, what you think will either be your best friend, your ally, or your worst enemy. Choose your adult voice. Choose the positive voice. Make every day a better one by approaching it from your adult point of view. Have a wonderful week.